Hi, everyone, and welcome back. I'm Heather Noble, and today I will be sharing an update to my angled DC2L stitch.
I'm going to demonstrate an angled DC2L, or an angled double crochet 2 to the left. So here's the stitch I'm at. That counts as 0. We're going to count 2 to the left, 1, 2, and work into this loop. I'm going to put a stitch marker in my origin stitch so that we know that our angled double crochet is going to count for this stitch. We won't work into the beige stitch. Our double crochet will lay across the top of it. So I'm going to make a double crochet from this stitch. So 0, 1, 2, inserting my hook from below the stitch and making a double crochet. That's an angled DC2L. Now it's important to make sure that we work our next single crochet into the right stitch. So let's look at the back. We have our origin stitch that we are not going to work into, and then our next stitch will go here. However, if you look at it from the front, it's completely hidden by the angle. So this is where a lot of people get off in their stitch count. It's really important to know where your origin stitch is and where your next stitch will work. So you need to push the angle to the side and work into this stitch right here. So if you look from the back, you see origin stitch, next stitch. So this is angled DC2L. Okay, let's say that your pattern calls for 3 angled DC2L in a row. So that in a written pattern, it would look like the words angled DC2L inside brackets, and then to the right of the brackets, it would say 3 times. Or if it's in your chart, it would have 3 of the arrow symbols pointing to the left in a row. Let's take a look at how it will work. Here's the stitch I'm at, and I'm going to work an angled DC2L. So here's, this count as 0, 1, 2 to the left, and I'm going to do 3 of them in a row. So here's the first one, the second one will work into this loop, and the third one will work into this loop. And let's place stitch markers in our origin stitches so we don't forget where those are. So here's our first stitch that originates here. Here's our second origin stitch. And here's our third origin stitch. So the first one, count to 0, 1, 2 will work into this loop. The second one, 0, 1, 2 will work into the middle loop. The third one, 0, 1, 2 will work into this third loop. And then our single crochet after that will work into this loop right here. Okay, so let's make that. Let's make our first double crochet, insert into the first loop, and our second one will work into the next loop, and our third one will work into the final loop. So we've made 3 angled DC2 2L stitches, and we need to see where to put our next stitch. So it gets a little tricky to see because it's behind the angles we just made, and that's the reason I put in the stitch markers for our origin stitches. So we have 1, 2, 3 origin stitches, and this is our next stitch that we work into, and it's behind the angles we just made. So that's why it's super important to know where your origin stitches are so that you can stay on your stitch count. So that is 3 angled DC2L in a row. Another instance where you'll see an angled DC2L is in combination with an angled DC1L and a regular double crochet. Those 3 stitches together are a common use in my patterns. And so I wanted to show you what that looks like worked up. The first stitch of the 3 in the group is an angled DC2L. Here's the origin stitch for the angled DC2L. So that counts as 0, and you count over 2 to the left, 1, 2, and it works into this first blue stitch. The second stitch in the combination is an angled DC1L, and it originates from this stitch right next to it. So first one is an arrow, angled DC2L. The next one in the combination is a slant, angled DC1L. So if you count that stitch as 0 and count over 1 to the left, you'll see it's the same stitch that works in 2. And then the final stitch of the 3 that originates here is a double crochet. Of course, that works directly below. So what that shows you is that in this combination of stitches, all 3 stitches will work into the same loop. So let me show you what that looks like. First one is an angled DC2 to the left, then into the same loop, an angled DC1L, and then the third stitch is a regular DC, and it's into that same loop. So all 3 stitches work into the same loop.
Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.